All right, so continuing with our discussion of different social institutions, we are now going to move into discussion of the education system and look at the role of education system in society and look a little bit about what the sociology of education studies. So in this section, we're going to briefly cover, again, what social institutions are, understanding what education system is as an institution, as an example of this, and look a little bit at the manifest or obvious function of that system, and then maybe call it into question a little bit. A social institution is a set of status positions, roles, and relations. And this is the 40th time I've recorded it, so if I sound a little terse, you'll have to effing forgive me. So basically, this means that in something like a family, which is a social institution, we have the positions of parents and children. And when we're in that position, we know how they're supposed to behave. Parents are supposed to guide, to parent, to teach children to be caring and loving. Children are supposed to be obedient, to listen, to also be loving. And when we see those people in those positions not behaving in those ways, we know something's wrong with that institution. Moreover, we understand that the institution is malfunctioning in some way. So institutions help shape and guide our action. As we move into positions, we understand how we're related to the people around us, and we understand that how we are supposed to behave. Moreover, all institutions meet a basic social need. Families are supposed to raise and socialize the next generation, as well as serve as a support network and a care network for individuals. This begs the question of what is the purpose of the education system as an institution, and what are the positions and roles and relations within it? All right, so the education system, what are the basic positions within this? What are the things we're going to find in basically any education system, whether it's high school, university, whether we're in Zimbabwe, China, or the US? Well, fundamentally, we're going to have teachers and students. In every education system, there are those who teach and those who learn. We also will probably have an administrative system above that, a principal, a provost, whatever it is. But those are the basic positions. When I'm in the position of teacher or you are in the position of student, we know the roles expected of us. How do we behave? We're obedient, we learn, we write notes, we nod and smile. I behave in a professional way. I act like I know what I'm talking about, even if I don't. I do mostly. That's the role expected of me in that position. This can also tell us what the purpose of that education system is. It's to, at least on the surface, educate and to inculcate or grow knowledge in students, to pass on knowledge, to help them grow and move on in life. Sociologist Tressie McMillan Cottom has called the narrative around the education system in our country the education gospel. And part of what she's talking about is the way that what the education does is supposed to be a moral good thing. Getting an education is a positive quality. Someone who is more educated we've seen as better. So what we're thinking about is, what is the manifest or surface or obvious function or purpose of the education system? Well, one obvious one is to increase our social skills, the skills we need to survive in society. So we need to be able to read and write. We need to be able to add. We need to be able to understand algebra, or do we? So these are important skills that we need to be able to function in the broader world. This is why I have you all write all the time, because that's a skill you're going to need out there. On the surface, it also increases our qualifications for potential employment. The higher your degree, it so goes, the more qualified you are for more complex jobs. I spent 6 years getting my sociology degree, which is why I can do sociological research and lecture on it. I am supposedly an expert in the field. And finally, because we all want to get that money, so Rewards or returns to qualifications are a main goal for many who want to get a higher education degree. Another part of the education gospel is that it is a way out of poverty. It is a way of creating what we call social mobility. Social mobility means you are able to move from one social class, such as the lower class, to a higher one, like middle or upper class. If you just get an education, you will be better off in life. Another part of the education gospel. Let's look at some trends. So in the chart on the left, if you look at the blue line on the bottom, that represents, as you'll see by the notation, people who have less than high school. We see that since the 1990s, this number has been steadily decreasing. That segment of those adults age 25 or plus is less and less. We'll notice that all the segments in the top, from orange on up, or from some college on up, tend to be widening. That means a greater composition of adults 25 or over have some college or more. What this is showing us is that more and more of the population has higher degrees in our country. Look at the very top line, post-bachelor's. That means a master's or a doctoral degree. We'll see that that's a fairly larger percent of the population in 2013 than it is at the beginning in 1992. This is reflected as well in the bar chart to your right. We see that the red bars on everything post-high school are higher than the blue bars, which represent 1991, whereas the red bars represent 2014. The fact that they're taller shows us that the people in 2014 who have those degrees are higher than they were in 1991. Now look at high school. The blue bar is higher here, showing us that those who just had a high school degree in 1991 is higher than it was in 2014. Another consistent trend is that education does increase average income. So on average, the higher your degree, the more money you're likely to earn. This isn't always true, but on average, it is true. So there are still reasons to get this degree, despite some of the things we'll see that might be problems with this social institution of education. We might also note there are some racial disparities here. While Asians, for example, tend to academically achieve more than white folks, we might note that white folks in the same academic area earn more. So what's the problem with the education gospel and this idea that schooling helps increase our skills for jobs and meets the needs of a society that wants more educated people? Well, for one, schooling doesn't actually teach us a lot of technical requirements. This is a bit more true for people like doctors and scientists, but even in sociology, for example, a lot of the skills we learn doing sociology. We learn on the job. Similarly, for most jobs you will have, there will be a training period that will teach you some of those technical skills required specifically for those tasks. So schooling isn't teaching us those everyday technical requirements for particular jobs we're going to have. Moreover, if we think about those increases in post-bachelor's degrees, those masters and doctorates, we've seen that schooling has expanded a lot after college. More people are getting those higher degrees, but society doesn't actually have a lot to do with them. There's a major glut in people with PhDs, and not a lot of universities looking to hire them, and not a lot of places that are willing to hire someone with a PhD that in history, for example. Right? So schooling is actually growing larger than the demands in society. So all this kind of begs the question, what does schooling really do? What is the real function, or maybe the more important function of the education system? Stay tuned.